Welcome back to Rank and File Sports with Jonah and Connor. Today, we're going to be continuing our schedule previews with the Indiana Hoosiers. We'll be previewing every single Power 4 team as well as a few Group of 5 teams, so please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on your favorite team's video, as well as our official game-by-game predictions over the summer. Taking a look at the overall schedule, you got 7 games at home and 5 away for Indiana, and the non-conference is a piece of cake. Couple games to look out for here. Illinois at Iowa, and then the two toughest by far are going to be going on the road to Oregon and Penn State, way more difficult than last season. So we're going to bump up the schedule difficulty to a 4 out of 10.
The biggest thing to me too with why this schedule is just a little bit harder is that they have such a big stretch of games in between their two bye weeks, and they have to play Oregon and Penn State in that stretch without a bye week in between. So they're gonna be feeling it by the time they go to Happy Valley. But starting the season off with three home games in a row for the non-conference against Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State. All three of them are going to be 100% chances for the Hoosiers to get wins. Kennesaw State was one of the worst teams in college football last year. I believe they were 133 out of 134 teams in ESPN's final ranking of all 134 teams. So this non-conference does not get much easier than this. Following those three non-conference games, they start Big Ten play at home against Illinois. Both these two teams have had similar seasons last year. They had one of their best seasons in recent memory. Obviously, Indiana went to the college football playoff, and Illinois got a huge bowl win against a very good South Carolina team. So this is going to be a very good game early on in the season for these two teams. The difference maker for me is the fact that Illinois is returning Luke Altmaier at quarterback. Granted, Indiana is bringing in Fernando Mendoza to be their starting quarterback out of Cal, but just because Illinois has that continuity from last season, along with bringing in some other players, we are going to give Illinois a slight edge in this game, even with Indiana hosting Illinois. The Hoosiers got about a 45% chance in this game. And then going on the road to face Iowa. Another interesting game. Iowa is going to be in the same spot we always find them in, an offense that fails to impress and a defense that can hang with any team in the country. Should be a fairly interesting game, especially with it being at Iowa. Indiana could make some things happen, but I do think outside of the Illinois, Oregon, and Penn State games, this is one of their biggest tests during the season. Could be a potential trap game, considering that this is sandwiched in between that Illinois game and their bye week. But giving them about a 60% chance in this one going into their first bye week.
Yeah, after that, definitely the toughest game of the season. Going on the road to face Oregon at Autzen. Really, really tough place to play. This isn't a really solid Oregon team. I just don't really see a way that Indiana gets it done, especially because they're on the road. So about a 20% chance of an Indiana victory there. That's going to be flipped, though, when they head back home to face Michigan State with an 80% chance to take down the Spartans. I think Michigan State has a chance to improve this season, but I do still like Indiana. I think they're going to have a really solid roster next year. Maybe not quite good enough to make another run at the college football playoffs, but it's still going to be in the top half of the Big Ten. I don't know if Michigan State will quite get there. Another really bad team in the Big Ten last season was UCLA. And again, they're really losing more to the transfer portal than they're bringing in, like a lot of these lower tier Power Four schools. I don't really see a way that UCLA gets this one done on the road either, about an 85% chance of a Hoosier victory. Going on the road to Maryland, this one's a potential trap game. Maryland isn't going to be a great team. They'll maybe finish, round 500 or just below. But right before Penn State, this is a game that if Indiana gets caught looking ahead, they could potentially drop. So we have it about a 75% chance for an Indiana win. Then they're headed to Happy Valley. They didn't have to play the Nittany Lions last season. Unfortunately, they're going to have to do it this year along with Oregon. This is going to be really tough for this young Indiana team, and I don't think they're going to be able to get it done. About a 25% chance of an Indiana victory. And then finally, before the second bye week, you're facing Wisconsin at home. This one could also be a little bit tricky just because it's at the end of a really long stretch, but I'm not super high on this Wisconsin team. They're probably going to be pretty close to 500 again this season, not one of the top teams in the Big Ten. So Indiana will be favored here at home at about a 75% chance to win.
And after that, they only got one more game on the schedule remaining, and that is at Purdue. Purdue is in shambles right now. Their only good offensive player from last season and Max Clare at tight end transferred to Ohio State. They're not going to get much better. The only reason we're giving Purdue a 20% chance in this one is because it's a home game for them and it is an in-state rivalry game. You never know what could happen, but this is a very, very solid chance for Purdue to lose this game. Indiana will finish off with the win here, giving them an 80% chance to get the win. Looking at the season as a whole, like we were saying earlier, non-conference is not the issue, but this Big Ten schedule for Indiana is much harder than they had last season. I think it's going to be very hard for them to reciprocate the success that they had last season. I don't see a college football playoff berth in their future, barring some incredible wins against Oregon and Penn State. I'm thinking maybe three or four losses here. I think Oregon and Penn State are for sure. I think Illinois is probably going to get the road win. And then maybe Michigan State makes something happen because I think Aiden Childs is a very good young quarterback, but I think he does need a little bit extra development. But maybe that raw athleticism gets him a win. Or either of those two trap games in at Iowa or hosting Wisconsin. So overall, I'm thinking 9-3, 8-4 is where we'll see the Hoosiers next season. Jonah, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with you between 3 and 4 losses. To me, I could see them starting out 0-3 in the Big Ten, honestly. I could see them dropping the Illinois game, dropping at Iowa, and then I just don't see them winning at Autzen. So they could start off 0-3 in Big Ten play, which would just be, I mean, a complete turnaround from what we saw last season. Either way, I agree that I don't think that Indiana can make the playoffs this season just because I can't see them winning at Oregon and at Penn State. And I think that even if Indiana were to go 10-2 with this schedule, if you lose to the only top two teams, there's probably going to be enough 10-2 teams out there that they'll be the ones who are left out this time.
Granted, that's how they got in the playoffs last year. Their only competitive game or their only ranked game was against Ohio State and maybe one other lower ranked Big Ten team. But the Ohio State one was their only loss. So unless those Penn State and Oregon games are like 1 point losses and they start as a top 10 team, I don't think there's any way that they make the playoffs.
Yeah. Speaking of last season, the Hoosiers went 11-2. And the projection for this year is a bit lower than that. Adding up all the percentages from that last screen, we see a win total of 8.45. That being said, we're going to go ahead and take just a little bit under that at 8-4. I think this is going to be a little bit disappointing for Indiana fans after making the playoffs last season. Probably not going back this year, and I don't actually think they're going to end up being that close, probably a game or two away. The Vegas over under is set at 8.5, with the under being slightly favored. So they're pretty much right there with us too. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.